talk to me about. So the question is, I saw the movie Perfect Strangers last night. It's an Italian movie about a group of couples that meet for dinner. They challenge each other to put their mobile phones on the table, and if the phone rings, they have to show the message or share the phone call with everyone. The outcome is that a lot of secrets are revealed about their relationships. I found out about my husband's affair through Facebook, and this movie really highlighted how our mobile phones and social media accounts allow us to have a kind of secret life, even though all the information is subpoenable and owned by Google, Facebook, etc. In the movie, they call the mobile phone the little black box. Like a black box in an aircraft that captures all the flight history of that plane. So our mobile phones capture all our information, personal, private, secret, our relationships, our movements, even our heart rate. Can you provide some tips for balancing our communication with our lover, husband, girlfriend, boyfriend, online, offline? Cheers. P.S. Loving what you're doing. That's just beautiful. Thank you so much. That movie, that sounds good. If ever that comes on Rooftop Cinema or something like that, I think we should all go to it and then maybe have a discussion, go to a coffee shop and have a discussion afterwards or something like that. In fact, that would be a fun thing to do through Meetup. If I could find a movie that's relationship based that we could all go to and then go to a coffee shop afterwards and we'd need to go on a Saturday, I think, so that there's time to go somewhere afterwards and actually have a discussion. I think that would be awesome. So I will think about that and think about how we can do it. That would just be terrific. All right. So, talking about social media. And, you know, our lives are really public on social media. I mean, we're photographing our food. We put our status on social media. Are we in a relationship, not in a relationship? All these photographs go up. You know, we ban each other and then we unban each other and we go in and look at each other's lives. And it's really a very interesting way to live. It almost appeals to this people wanting their 15 minutes of fame or something. And yet at the same time, our lives are very private. And of course, when I think about mobile phones, I think about going back to when I first met my husband. I was very young and I remember I gave him my phone number on a piece of paper. Can you believe it? And he said he would call me, and he said he would call me on Tuesday. And I sat all day, because there was no mobile phones, beside the old-fashioned phone waiting for him to call me. And then when the phone rang, I couldn't pick it up straight away because I didn't want him to think I've been sitting there all day. So I'm there and I'm letting it ring a few times just so he didn't think, you know, and then I'm thinking, oh no, I better not let it ring too much because it'll ring out. So then I grabbed it, you know, so yeah, the things we do. Yeah, so life was very different. And of course it was funny. I didn't tell my mother that the phone call was coming, but she knew something was going on, I know. Oh, actually, no. She was in Sydney at the time and my dad was there. But my dad was at work, so nobody knew. But you know, if my mum had been there, she would have known for sure what was going on. So, yeah, it's a really different life because, of course, if I'd had my mobile phone, I wouldn't have had to have told anybody. And in fact, I could have sent a text message. All sorts of things would have been very different. So, yeah, our life is it's just transformed amazingly with social media. So how do you balance that communication? Well, it's a difficult thing to answer. I mean, some people in my life, and I get quite annoyed with them, say, right, no social media, no mobile phone, or they have a very basic mobile phone, or no mobile phone at all. And people have no mobile phone at all. I'm sorry, I think they're very selfish because there are no public telephone booths anymore. Like, there just aren't. I mean, I think there are some at Flinders Street Station. There are some at some of the big landmarks, but that's about it. Whereas when I was growing up, there was a phone booth on every street corner because you didn't have a mobile phone. If you wanted to ring somebody, you had to go and find a phone. Then you had to get change and you had to put I'm old-fashioned. You know, I'm old. You had to put money. I'll never forget it. And going into the phone booth, and if the phone was faulty, you know, putting the money in and either didn't drop through or it dropped all the way through. and then you'd be like, oh, I need to make a phone call. It was really, really frustrating. So, people who don't have a phone at all, I think they're very selfish, because if there is a crisis and you never know when there's going to be one, they're just relying on everybody else to make the 000 phone call. So, yeah, it's a really interesting one. Social media, mobile phones, very charged and very emotional. So how do you actually navigate that? Now, some people, think that we, should have time out from phones and blackouts and all sorts of things. And really, it gets down to what works for you and what works for you in your relationship in terms of your own personal boundaries. Very important. However, there are some tips I can give you, which I'm going to talk about now. The first thing is you need to talk to your partner or family member, lover, husband, girlfriend, boyfriend, blah, blah, anyone you're romantically involved with in particular, or even friends, about how public you want to be, because they're sharing things and they probably share stuff about you as well, which you may or may not be comfortable with. So the first thing is talking to your partner about how you want to use social media. So are there any platforms, pages or groups that you don't feel comfortable with having him or her involved in? Thinking about your social media boundaries. So thinking about the sorts of things that you would put out online. Things like your status, your relationship status, or certain photographs. Talk to your partner about your feelings around contact with exes. This is really important, especially at the beginning of the relationship. Once the relationship is settled and you have trust, it becomes a very different situation, because you've set up your boundaries. You know each other inside out, and you know whether you would hope you'd know whether you could trust that person or not. And ultimately, you must always remember that if you put these boundaries in place and say you must not talk to your ex on Facebook, that there's two things that happen. Number one, it will make no difference. If your partner is going to go back to their ex, if they're going to cheat on you or whatever, they're going to do it whether you put these boundaries in place or not. Yeah? So always remember that. Putting the boundary in place of saying you must not speak to your ex is actually more about yourself than it is about them, because it makes you feel safe. You think, I've told him not to talk to his ex, so he's not going to talk to his ex, so therefore he's not going to leave me. Yeah? So it's very important that you remember that if you put any boundary you put in place is for you, not really for them. So it's really important that you talk to your partner more about your feelings around them contacting their ex. Now, if you tell them absolutely you must not contact your ex and you must not talk to them on Facebook, you run the risk that either they'll do it behind your back, or B, if they don't talk to their partner, they'll do it with resentment. So they're doing it because you've told them not to, not because they don't want to, if that makes sense. And it happens with resentment. It doesn't happen because they want to for the health of the relationship, if that makes sense. So probably what works better, I think, is to say to someone, look, by all means, talk about, hi Chloe, by all means, talk about how you feel about him talking to your ex. That's really important. If it upsets you, he needs to know it's upsetting you, and that if he chooses to continue, that it is something that you don't like. That's really important. However, I would recommend that rather than saying don't, talk about what you need from your partner to be safe. So that things like, you don't want your partner sneaking off to see their ex and you don't know about it. You don't want your partner having private conversations with their ex that you don't know anything about. You don't want your partner concealing. It's the concealment. You don't want your partner meeting their ex at their home. You want a coffee in public is fine. It's when they start plotting and planning to have time on their own that I think is inappropriate, probably disrespectful for you as the primary partner, and needs to be negotiated. So I think it's actually better for you to negotiate how they would, because you see the way the world is now, people find each other. I had the very first boy who ever kissed me come back into my life. It was extraordinary. When I first saw him, I hadn't seen him for 30 years. It was amazing. It was the most amazing experience to see him again. Now, I have got boundaries around that friendship. So my partner knows every single time I talk to him. My partner knows when I'm going to see him for lunch. My partner knows that we meet in the city. My partner knows that we meet in a big public place in the city, and he knows what we talk about. I often talk to him about the conversation when I get home and say, this is what's been happening and all that kind of thing. So he knows it's a transparent friendship based on the fact that I met this person when I was 16. And we have both had really interesting, extraordinary lives and made some very interesting choices. And it's been an amazing experience for me to see what became of him, what happened, and for him with me as well. So, but that transparency is what is so important, so important. And for you, it's good for you to sit with your fear of loss and remember that if you tell him, no, you can't see this person, that's about you managing your fear of loss more so than it is, and deluding yourself into thinking that if you stop that contact, that it'll stop him. It won't stop him. If he's going to have an affair, if he's going to cheat on you, if he's going to go and look up an ex, whatever, he's going to go and do it. That's the reality. Make an agreement with your partner that any arguments, disagreements, important discussions, intimate discussions happen between you in real life and are not taken onto social media. It's awful. Everybody weighs in on it. I mean, we see people, the stars do it. And, they're very strong, the stars that have a whole lot of stuff said about them and don't respond. But it just makes everything so public, and it can make an argument very, very difficult to recover from. So that conversation about your use of social media and being able to name it and say, if ever we have an argument, can we please keep it between us, is just so important. Because, you don't want to end up with everybody knowing about it. And then it becomes a space of you two moving on and getting on with it and getting over it, and having people in your personal life saying, what happened to you guys on Friday? And as far as you're concerned, it's all over, but for them, it's still going. And once something's out there, even if you delete it in your space, if it's been shared, it goes on and on and on and on. So just being very mindful of that. To me, making an argument public it's just so disrespectful. It's disrespectful to each other, and it's disrespectful to the intimate space between you. Choose your social media friends carefully. This is really important. Always have in the back of your mind, would my partner be happy with me being friends with this person? And because obviously you're going to model the behavior you want from your partner. So if your partner, you want your partner not to be friends with, some of these girls that can get inside their heads, then you don't be friends with guys that might get inside your head, or you don't, hi Rowena, you don't have, that profile on Tinder that you had ages ago that you might just reactivate, So just being mindful of who you're friends with and how all that happens, that you are operating as part of a unit. And, if you say certain things to your partner might upset you, and your partner goes ahead and does it anyway, or isn't able to negotiate with you and be transparent, that gives you a lot of information about him and how he is in a relationship. And it might be that you decide that you don't want to be with someone that doesn't respect how you feel. Be really mindful of computer chat. It's a powerful thing. There's something about tapping into a computer, even talking into a Facebook Live, I've done it myself, where you find yourself sharing more about yourself than maybe you otherwise would. So just be really, really careful of that. Of course, you can have platonic friendships online. We have platonic friendships in real life. But it's about just being mindful not to reveal too much about your relationship, because your relationship is a private space, and that's important. And of course, these areas give you areas to discuss with your partner. And that conversation can be so helpful, because if you know the areas of social media where there might be an issue, then it's really important that you name all of these with your partner, have that discussion, and then it's really clear if he's broken the boundaries of the relationship, and then you can decide what you want to do. There's none of this, oh, well, he didn't know, he made a mistake, oh, maybe this, maybe that. It's very clear. They're scary conversations to have because they take your relationship into a serious space. But at the same time, they're so important to have, especially at the beginning of the relationship, because that's when you're building trust. So what's a sign, and social media gives us lots of signs, what's a sign your partner might not be doing the right thing? And I've got a blog post coming up very soon on the signs that your partner might be having an affair. And I've written, I think the one that's gone up this week is about your partner, how to tell if your partner's, why men have affairs. Sorry, my brain switched off. Why men have affairs. The next post is about how to tell if your partner's having an affair. And one of the things you want to look for, and this is a huge one, in fact, all the other indicators pale into significance with this, apart from this one, is if your partner is extra protective of his mobile phone. So that means he picks up his mobile phone, he puts it face down on the table so you can't see who's calling him, or you can't read any stray messages that might be coming through. He won't give you the password to his mobile phone. Or if he does give you the password to his mobile phone, if you do snoop, and honestly, if you feel the need to snoop, that's never a good sign in a relationship. It means the relationship really is, it's not working, and it's on its, yes, Joe, exactly. It's on its last legs, really. If you're snooping, you have no trust. So, but if you did go through and snoop in your partner's phone, and this is how women often discover their partners are having affairs, because they find things, you need to be mindful that if you're reading a passage of messages and you see certain messages that looks like they're deleted, that can be a sign. So look for that. If he won't let you have the password to his mobile phone or his computer, so you can't go in and just use all the social media because he's got nothing to hide, that's a big indicator as well. It can be a sign of an affair, it can be a sign of a porn addiction, and it can be a sign of sex addiction. Or some other kind of deceit going on in the relationship. I had a girl come and see me once, and she couldn't work out what it was, and then it turned out that the husband's business had gone bad. He hadn't told her, and then when he finally told her, he was like, in a fortnight we have to sell the house and we're going bankrupt. So, it's not necessarily an affair, but it's a big signal that something's not right. So the important thing is to recognise that when you ask for boundaries, if you're asking for really firm boundaries about things, often it's more about you than it is about him. It's about you wanting to control his behaviour to make yourself feel safe. But also having clear boundaries is about you having the opportunity to express how you feel about things and to set some ground rules to build trust in the relationship. So it's not all about you just controlling. There is a certain opportunity for you to talk about how things make you feel, and also about setting some ground rules in the relationship about how you will be together. And of course, when things are nice and clear, it makes it really clear that if behaviours are disrespected, that you're with somebody that maybe isn't going to handle your heart with care. And so that's really important. So that's my answer to that one. It's a difficult one because we all have different boundaries. So it's important that you have that heart-to-heart, hi Nick, that heart-to-heart conversation with your partner. Very important. So that's the end of my answer to how to manage social media in your relationship. My excellent, fabulous, sensational news is Stop Kissing Toads is